virtual reality, feeding sensory data directly to our brains, so that we are essentially living in a world that does not exist, interacting with other, quote, real humans, but our senses are lying to us all the time about things as fundamental as our name, our age, and whether we are walking or laying down. The Matrix is the consensual hallucination that the human race experiences. Eric, the question of whether the universe exists is not as simple as most people think. Your questions presume that we can only have reason and logic if reality exists independently. That's not necessarily true. A matrix-like illusion could be created where 2 + 2 = 5 every single time. Your brain looks at 2 fingers on one hand, 2 fingers on the other, but when putting them into one view, they suddenly become 5. You wouldn't consider this to be unusual because your brain would be conditioned to accept these altered laws of mathematics. You could just as easily have a universe where 2 + 2 could be any number from 3 to 9, depending on the time of day or the color of the objects. When you say 2 + 2 = 4, you're drawing on deductive and inductive rules that work on your perception of reality. Your perception could be wrong, though, and there's no easy solution to this problem of global skepticism. You might also be familiar with Plato's allegory of the cave. In it, 2 prisoners are imprisoned from birth in such a way that they can't move their arms, legs, or even move their heads to the side. Behind them, people are carrying figures that block light from a fire, producing the shadows that are the only things the prisoners can observe. The prisoners mistake the shadows on the cave wall for the real things themselves, and their limited experience gives them no way to know that outside the cave is an entire world of real things. Yet they become very excited when one of them can predict which shadow will pass on the wall next. Their reason appears to work, to be predictive within the constraints of the logic of the shadow world. So in light of these classic and not-so-classic examples, I hope you'll agree that your belief in an objective, independent reality is not based on any true knowledge. Thunderfoot's points were mostly about the provisional nature of knowledge, and this is a key concept in the philosophy of science. I can't tell you that the law of conservation of mass is true or false, real or unreal. I accept it provisionally as appearing to be predictive and being useful to my imperfect perception. Most of scientific knowledge about the natural world is considered to be provisional, and we only value it insofar as it provides useful explanations or predictions. If the reality we experience is the result of a mad scientist experiment where we are all brains in a jar hooked up to electrodes, science and reason still has some utility. It's not describing ultimate reality, mind you, but it can explain the simulations we experience and sometimes predict them, like our prisoners in the allegory of